We all say goodbye at some point, to people, to moments, to versions of ourselves that no longer fit. But not all goodbyes are loud. Some slip through the cracks like smoke from a dying flame, unannounced, unfinished. And when they do, we pretend. We pretend we didn't notice their absence. We busy our hands. We crowd our calendars. We post, we laugh, we shine. But inside, there's a small corner of silence, a silence shaped like them. I once met a traveler who never cried when his mother died. He said, "I didn't need to. I understood life." But every morning he brewed 2 cups of tea and drank only 1. That is how the heart mourns what the mind avoids. Let me tell you something the world may not. Silence is not always peace, and stillness is not always healing. Sometimes it's the body trying not to fall apart. Sometimes it's grief wearing a mask. The most dangerous pain is the one we don't admit exists.
You might not cry, you might not break, you might not even say their name anymore. But if your smile feels heavier than it used to, if music stings a little more than it should, if your quiet moments suddenly feel loud, you haven't said goodbye. You've only walked around it. You see, we carry these invisible goodbyes like stones in our pockets. Too light to stop us, too heavy to feel free. The mistake isn't in missing someone. The mistake is in believing that pretending makes us strong. There is no strength in denial. There is only delay. Grief doesn't vanish. It waits. Like water behind a dam, it presses quietly until the wall starts to whisper. I once sat with a woman who had lost her partner 30 years ago. She smiled through her stories. But when I asked if she had forgiven herself for moving on, she went quiet. You see, some goodbyes are loud on the outside, but others echo inward. So let me offer this. You don't have to collapse to admit pain. You don't need tears to grieve. And then, listen. Because healing isn't loud either. It whispers. It comes in the form of understanding why it still hurts, and why that's okay. When the goodbye stays inside you, it begins to shape how you live. You flinch when people get too close. You panic when love feels familiar. You learn to leave before you're left. But you are not meant to become the absence that someone else left behind. You are not a monument to someone else's departure. You are still here. And that means you still have a choice. I see you, I feel you, but I do not belong to you. The moment you name it, it loses its grip. The goodbye will still hurt, yes, but it will no longer control the volume of your joy. The moments we imagined. The future we rehearsed in our heads. The things we never said, that still echo. I once met a man who grieved not the woman who left him, but the child they never had. He held a name in his heart for someone who never existed. This is the ghost of what could have been. It visits us in dreams. It shows up in empty doorways, in songs that feel like memories, even when they aren't. You see, unrealized possibilities have a strange power because no one can confirm them and no one can take them away. They live in the in-between, in the quiet, in the if only. Sometimes we don't miss the person. We miss the version of ourselves we thought we'd become with them. And that is a grief all its own. We mourn the alternate timeline where they stayed, where the phone call came, where the apology was made, where we were brave enough to say, "I love you," before they walked away. When you carry these kinds of ghosts, the world doesn't always see them. There are no funerals for the things that never happened, no rituals to release the life that didn't unfold. But within you, it lingers.
Say, "I wanted to grow old with you. I wish I had answered your message. I still think about the life we almost lived." Let your voice meet the silence. Let the ache breathe. Sometimes you're not crying for who they were. You're crying for what you hoped they'd be. And that's valid. That's human. I once knew a woman who left a chair at her dinner table for the daughter she never had. Every night she would place a napkin there. She said it helped her remember love, even when life didn't deliver it. That's the thing about grief. It doesn't follow rules. It doesn't only mourn the tangible, it stretches into the imagined, into the undone, into the soft spaces of the soul. So if you feel haunted by a goodbye that was never properly said, or a path you almost walked, or a love that never fully bloomed,
So use it. Speak to the ghost, not to banish it, but to bless it, to thank it for reminding you what your heart was capable of dreaming. And then, let it go. Let it rest. Let you rest. The life you thought you lost was never promised, but the life you're in is still yours, and it still holds beauty. Even if the dream was never lived, the love behind it was real, and that matters. Speak to what could have been, so you can finally live what is. Some conversations never end, even when the person is gone. Not because we're holding on, but because our hearts don't know what to do with the silence. We speak to them still, in our minds. When we speak to those we've lost, in silence or in whispers, we are honoring the bond that shaped us. It is not weakness to remember. It is not foolish to speak into empty rooms. It is sacred. The soul speaks a language the world doesn't always understand, and sometimes that language sounds like, "I miss you." Did you see that sunset? Would you have been proud of me today? No one else hears it, but it's real. It's you continuing a dialogue that once brought you comfort, even if now it only brings tears.
Do not shame yourself for these conversations. They are part of the process. Grief doesn't ask for permission. It builds a home in your chest. And sometimes, the only way to keep breathing is to let it speak. You may speak to a parent you've lost, a friend who vanished, a lover who chose another path. And it might make no logical sense. You see, love doesn't end, it changes shape. And in its new form, it waits to be acknowledged. So go ahead, speak to them. Write the letter you never sent. Say the words you never said. Sit in the stillness and allow their name to rise. You don't need closure to begin again. You need acceptance. Speak not to bring them back, but to bring yourself forward. To let your heart stretch into the space where they used to live. And to remind your spirit, you are still allowed to speak, even if the world has moved on, even if everyone else has gone silent. Your voice is sacred. Your memory is alive. When we talk to the ones we've lost, we are reminding the universe that love doesn't die. These conversations, they are your bridge between the then and the now. They hold your story. They honor your ache. They help you keep walking. So speak to the ones you've lost, not because you can't let go, but because you remember what it meant to hold on. And in that remembering, you remain whole. Healing is not the finish line. It's not a moment when everything becomes perfect again. It's not forgetting. It's not pretending. It is remembering without the weight. Letting go doesn't mean erasing what happened. It means learning how to hold it differently. You see, too often we believe that in order to heal, we must hate who we were, that we must punish ourselves for what we didn't know, for who we trusted. Sometimes you'll think you've healed, and then the wound whispers again. A song, a scent, a phrase, and suddenly it stings. That's not failure. That's not regression. That's simply another layer rising to the surface, asking to be seen. Healing isn't linear. It curves, it doubles back, it pauses, and all of that is holy. You are not behind. You are becoming. I once watched a flower bloom late, weeks after the others. The gardener smiled and said, "This one just needed more quiet." And so do you. Some parts of you don't heal through effort. They heal through presence, through stillness, through not blaming yourself for how long it's taking. Let me remind you, the person you were made it here. They got you through. They protected you the only way they knew how. Even if it wasn't perfect, even if it left scars, you can thank them now. You can whisper, "I understand." And in that whisper, the healing begins. You are not your worst day. You are not the mistake that keeps you up at night. You are not broken, just rebuilding. You are not too late, just on your own clock. And even if the world doesn't see your healing, you will feel it in the way you speak to yourself, in the way you stay present during pain, in the way you allow joy without apology. So don't rush, don't compare. Healing without hating yourself, that's the most courageous act of all. And you are already doing it. There comes a time when the goodbye no longer hurts. Not because you've forgotten, not because it didn't matter, but because you've changed. Pain has softened into understanding. Tears have given way to quiet smiles. And the wound, though still there, no longer bleeds. You begin to feel peace, not because the goodbye disappeared, but because you've made space for it. You've stopped fighting the memory. You've stopped rewriting the ending. You stopped needing closure from someone who couldn't give it. And now, you breathe differently. I once knew a woman who kept a photo of her ex-husband on her altar, not out of longing, but out of gratitude. She said, "He broke me open. And from that crack, I finally bloomed." This is the goodbye that doesn't hurt anymore. Not erased, but transformed. You no longer flinch at their name. You no longer check their status. You no longer replay the last words or wonder what if. You simply let them be. Let you be. And in that letting go, something shifts. Healing isn't about forgetting. It's about remembering without reliving. You still know what it cost. You still know what it meant. But it no longer owns your joy. It no longer defines your day. It's there like a stone polished by time, not jagged, not heavy, just part of the path. And maybe you don't even realize when the shift happens. One morning you notice their birthday came and went, and your chest didn't ache. One night you find yourself laughing, truly laughing, without guilt. One ordinary moment, and you realize, I made it. This is not forgetting. This is not denial. This is arrival. You've arrived at a place where their presence no longer feels like absence, where your future doesn't need their shadow, where your story belongs entirely to you. And yes, you'll always carry something, but now it's not pain, it's wisdom, it's growth, it's a quiet knowing that you survived and became more whole in the breaking. Some shape us into someone softer, someone more awake. I once met a monk who said, "There are people who are not meant to stay. They are meant to wake us." And so they did. You no longer hold them with clenched fists. You hold them gently, in memory, without ache, without blame, without hoping they'll return, because now you've returned to yourself. Let this be the blessing of your goodbye, not a scar, but a symbol, not a wall, but a window, not a loss, but a turning.
You are not what was taken from you. You are what rose after. And this moment right now is proof. Proof that you can love again. Proof that joy is possible again. Proof that peace does not come from answers, but from acceptance. So, if today you feel that soft warmth where sorrow used to sit, if your voice no longer cracks when you tell the story, if you can bless their journey and mean it, you are free, but because it no longer controls you. And that, dear one, is grace. So go live, unapologetically, without waiting for a sign or a sorry or a second chance. You are allowed to be whole, even with cracks. You are allowed to smile, even when they're gone. You are allowed to write the next chapter. Say it now, as gently as you can. I forgive you. I forgive myself. I release the ache. I honor the love. I welcome what's next. This is the goodbye that no longer hurts. And you are finally home.